I'm at Stokksnes. It's a really prominent mountain feature. This black sand beach. It's got, you know, grass mounds sticking out of it. It's super cool looking. This is on private land, so you got to pay to get in. It's 900 Icelandic krona per person, which is actually just a few bucks US. But they've got a nice little cafe too. I got myself a waffle and a coffee, and that was really nice. There's also the set of this Viking series or movie or whatever the heck it was. That's over on the base of this mountain. That's in a composition I'm shooting right now, actually. This is just my first stop along the roadway. I'm sorry if it's hard to hear because it's really windy, you might be able to see. Unfortunately, too windy for the large format camera, I think, so I'm shooting digital right now. I'm shooting with my 16 to 35, and I'm just kind of making compositions out of these grass mounds pointing towards the mountain. There's a lot of atmosphere and clouds breaking up over the mountains right now, so that's a bonus. We've had some really dramatic weather today, so it seems like that's going to continue on for a while anyway. It's chilly because it's right by the coast with all the wind. You got this pretty cold sea breeze coming across, and it's whipping all of this black sand everywhere. It's actually kind of mesmerizing to watch, but it's also hard to keep it out of your eyes, you know? So yeah, you gotta be careful if you're changing lenses and stuff. Make sure you're shielding the camera from getting any dust and sand blown into the sensor or something. So I've taken a few vista shots of the mountain. I'm still looking for a couple more of those. Taking a few different compositions. I'm just walking around trying to line up some foreground that makes sense. You know, shooting high, shooting low, you know, trying different perspectives. And then just now I was setting up, looking straight down at some of these sand ripples, just kind of trying to capture it while there's some of this black sand was blowing through. It's just some neat, interesting patterns, and with the sand blowing through it, it kind of really captures the feeling of what it's like to be here. It's just really windy. Yeah, lots of fun. It's well worth the price of admission so far, and it's a beautiful place, and I'm hopeful that there'll be lots of things to shoot here. It sure seems like it at first glance. So the wind certainly makes it a challenge to work out here. It makes it less comfortable for sure. But it also adds an element to it, you know, with all the drifting sand blowing by, it looks cool, and it's moving all of the blades of grass, you know, and that's, we got all these clouds and atmosphere over the top of the mountain and stuff, so I'm trying to use that. So I'm experimenting right now, and I've lined up a mound of grass in front of my camera here, it's facing the mountain here, and I've dropped in a 10-stop ND filter. So I'm shooting some longer exposures. I'm at about 30 seconds right now. And what that's doing is a couple things. First, the grass is whipping all over, so that's going to be completely blurry, which is intentional. Then it's quite a bit of cloud activity. Clouds are moving, so smoothing that out a little bit too. I don't know if I'll like it. We'll see, I guess. Back of the camera looks interesting, something a little different. But my 10-stop filter also adds a little bit of a blue cast, something that kind of annoys me. But in this case, it actually makes it kind of feel more like it's at twilight. It's kind of cool. But then I've also switched over to a black and white profile, and I'm shooting some black and whites in the back of the camera. I think that looks even better, you know, with the motion blur and then the black and white. I think it's kind of cool. If nothing else, it's something different, you know. So I'm all about experimentation and trying new things. So let me know down in the comments what you think. Here's that shot. So now I'm exploring more of this beach. It's a really nice black sand beach. It's got an arc that kind of creates a leading line leading right up to this mountain. And I'm using the incoming waves that are crashing on the beach as foreground interest here. So this is really just all about timing, you know, picking the right moment in time where the the incoming waves are lined up in just the right spot to give you the kind of foreground that I want. So to help me out with that, I've set up my built-in intervalometer. So I'm taking a series of 5 images all at once, at 1 second intervals. I might actually set that faster if I could, but the camera doesn't go any faster than 1 second. So that's helping me capture multiple images as one wave comes in. I just wait for the right size wave to start coming in that looks good, and I'll hit the shutter, and then it'll take a series of 5 images for me, and it just increases my odds of getting the right capture at the right time. Just a bit ago, we were getting some dappled light across one of these peaks up here. Looks really, really good. And I've set up down here up above on this rock outcrop, trying to stay away from the waves, because man, those waves sneak up on you, and the next thing you know, your feet are wet. So I'm up a little higher, which is giving me a better vantage point of the beach as it sweeps off in the distance over here. And I've dropped in my 6-stop ND filter, little stopper from Lee. And that's giving me a shutter speed of 1/3 of a second, which is about perfect for the amount of motion blur I want in these waves. I don't want it completely smoothed out, but I want it to be a little less jagged, But just like the other beach shots where they had a bunch of cloud motion up here above the mountains, that's still happening now, so I got a little bit of blur up in the sky too. I think it's a good look. I really like it. It's a beautiful place. Getting some absolutely beautiful images here, so I'm really happy with this. What I have today is kind of more monotone drama, so I'm using that to my advantage, the white highlights of the water with a black beach makes it really easy to kind of exemplify the monochromatic aspect of this composition. So now all I'm doing is just camping out on this and waiting to see if I can get some more dappled light. I'll give it a few more minutes here, just shooting alternates, kind of waiting to see if I get anything special with the light conditions, and if not, then I think I'm about ready to move on. I can see that Viking village from across the beach over here, and it's looking kind of interesting, so I think I'm gonna go check that out next, so stay tuned. I don't think the Vikings had one of those. Maybe they did, but I think the world would be a different place if they did. So I was sitting there eating lunch in the van. I thought I'd Google this and see what movie this is from. Apparently it was built in 2009, and it was for a movie that was never filmed. It's kind of a bummer, because I thought it'd be fun to go watch that when I get home now, but I shan't be doing that.
According to scattered internet folklore, the Viking Village replica film set was built for a Universal Studios production, but was scrapped due to budgetary reasons. Supposedly, the local landowner agreed to allow the set to be built on his property under the conditions that they would leave it when they were done. And since the set's abandonment, it's become a tourist attraction. The doors are nailed shut, and the buildings aren't safe for occupation, since they were built as movie props with minimal structural reinforcement. Still, it was fun to walk the site and peer in all the windows and catch a glimpse behind the scenes. Of course, I don't spend a lot of time hanging around authentic Viking villages, but it seems like they did a convincing enough job, and it was a lot of fun trying to imagine how the whole production would come together.
Found myself another waterfall. This one I have no idea the name of. I've didn't even know it existed. I was just driving by and I could see it from the road. So I pulled in to go check it out. And it's kind of a little gold mine in here. It's actually a series of waterfalls, a couple cascades. So on these upper falls, you got this one, that one, and then there's actually one right behind me here. There's 3 different waterfalls on this one cliff face. It's kind of the upper falls area. And then down lower, there's a lower falls I'm gonna go explore next. But the sky above it is completely engulfed in clouds. So it's all white right now. And it's a shelf that goes over, and then there's a big mountain in the background here. That's also in clouds, but just underneath that is a bunch of detail that looks really good. There's a couple like additional waterfalls that are coming down the side of this mountain face here. This country is just completely full of waterfalls. It's incredible. So I'm including that, plus all the little kind of details and greens and highlights and stuff up here on the cliff face, and then just a little bit of running water in the foreground here. I think it worked pretty well. Now I think I'm gonna grab the camera and I'm gonna kind of start walking down and try to get a further view, maybe try a different focal length, you know, start playing with different compositions, because there's so much stuff here. It's incredible. What a great find. Just driving by and I see a waterfall. Let's go check that out.
I had actually bought my Horseman 6x12 film back, specifically for going on this trip. I figured the more panorama style crop would be well suited to the types of scenes I would shoot, but more importantly, it drastically reduced the amount of gear I had to bring with me, since I didn't have to have a film changing tent or bulky sheet film holders, and getting through airport security with roll film would be a lot more straightforward.
You didn't give me any flack about that at all. They're really nice about it. Awesome.
Of course, there's hazards involved in heading out on a trip like this with new gear that you haven't grown accustomed to. And several frames on this roll suffered from double exposures because I kept forgetting to wind after taking each shot. Regrettably, all of the images from the upper falls were destroyed, but it just goes to show that I'm human and I make mistakes too. Thankfully, I took some backup exposures with the 5D Mark IV.
So I'm further down on the lower falls now. I'm shooting up towards the upper falls. So you can kind of line them both up in the composition, which I think is really cool. And then as a bonus, behind it, the sky's starting to break up. So I can see down the valley a lot more. So I got more detail at the top of the composition too. Because of the perspective I'm at, and I'm including more of this foreground pool and then the bright sky, I'm getting a lot of glare. So I've added my landscape polarizer and my one stop and graduated ND to bring the top of the composition down just a little bit. The first exposure I took, there was still quite a bit of clouds up here, so that was what that graduated ND was for. But now that that's starting to kind of dissipate a little bit, I was a little unsure about my exposure, so I bracketed my exposures this time. So I took one shot at 1 second, one at 2 seconds, accounting for the circular polarizer and any change in lighting conditions. Yeah, it's a absolutely killer spot. I didn't expect to stop here and spend, better part of 2 hours down here just searching for composition and shooting them. Sure glad I did. I'm kind of wishing I had a piece of sheet film on me right now so I could shoot the full 4x5, because the tops of those peaks are looking mighty cool, but they're not in my composition because I'm cropped in with a 6x12 back. Now, as I've been sitting here recording this to camera, of course this is dissipated even more. So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take one more shot, but I'm going to remove the graduated ND and just shoot it with the landscape polarizer.
The top frame is the last exposure I took without the grad. The bottom frame was the previous exposure with the grad and a stop additional light. It seems the ideal exposure would have been in between the two somewhere, but the darker exposure retained enough detail, and I like the additional breaking sky in the background.
So as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, Sure help me out if you hit that thumbs up button down below. That really helps channels like mine out. Maybe while you're down there, consider hitting that subscribe button if you want to see more videos from me, more from Iceland. We got a few of them coming up. Take care of yourself, and I'll catch you in the next video.